Muse. It hasn't been very long, doesn't seem like. I guess maybe because I was writing last night and thinking about you. I can't not think about you while I'm writing. But anyway, that's not what I want to talk about. I have something really actually enlightening to discuss with you. And this was kind of brought about after me attempting to read a few books recently. And finding after getting into fifth, sixth way through the books that I wasn't really enjoying the process of reading the books. I'll explain a little bit more about that in a moment. But the subject that came up for me was something that has been tirelessly and endlessly discussed within the world of writers. And that topic is, I'm almost hesitant to say it because it brings about such frustration with certain people. The subject is, for lack of a better term, show don't tell. I thought you'd cringe. But it's an incredibly important subject. I want to preface this by saying this. Preface this by saying this. I want to preface that by saying this. Preface this by saying that. Within the world of writing, actually within the world of art, rules are meant to be broken. But you can really only break the rules if you know the rules. And I am an advocate of breaking the rules. And of course, breaking them only if you know them. But I feel like this isn't really a rule. It's a suggestion, but it's an important suggestion. But I feel like it is a rule that should not be broken. Why? Well, I guess we have to understand what it means first. And therein kind of lies the problem. I have read so many different descriptions and explanations of show don't tell. And none of them really do it justice. At least the ones that I've read. Now, where I come from, I learned the idea of show don't tell in a roundabout way. And it came from graduate school where I was studying to get my MFA in acting at Purdue University. And I studied script analysis with Annie McGregor, who was a brilliant professor. And the idea of show don't tell for me, now understand that this is all from my perspective, okay? The idea of show don't tell for me comes from what is called exposition. Exposition could be often considered like the backstory, the build-up. It's usually the first part of a book wherein the author will lay out kind of the ground rules for what's going on. And typically speaking, the exposition is telling. Exposition, an author will spend a lot of time, not a lot of time, an author will spend time telling the reader what is going to happen, what has happened, or what to expect. Okay? Generally speaking, in the exposition, there's not a lot of dialogue. It's really a lot of narration that is sometimes necessary. And the problem is that too many authors, or not too many, a lot of authors spend way too much time telling that exposition to the reader instead of actively showing that exposition to the reader. And this became very obvious to me recently with a string of books that I read, wherein that I would get to chapter 5, 6, 7, 8, and nothing's happened. No plot has been introduced. It's just been a bunch of description and backstory and setup. And to the average reader, to most readers, that is not engaging. No matter how beautifully written the prose is, it's inactive, which is important, and it does nothing or very little to further the plot along. And plot is important. The thing is that as writers, it is our job to tell a story. And when you tell nothing but exposition, you aren't setting the story in motion. Now, you can show that exposition, and by showing it, you can have the characters in the book interacting with one another to tell that backstory or set up the plot or get the plot in motion, which is far more effective than telling it. So the easiest way to know if as a writer you are telling and not showing is to go to read your book. Read the beginning of your book. Is there any dialogue in that book? Is there any interaction? Has the plot kicked in? Have you sucked the reader in by means of a story, or are you still too busy setting up the plot? Now, you have to understand, because of my background obviously is that of acting. I studied it. I have a bachelor's degree and an MFA in acting. And within that world, we very clearly understand that as an artist, as a performer, you have a very short span of time for which to get the audience's attention engaged upon you. I mean, think about an audition. You go to an audition as an actor, and you typically have about a minute's time total to perform a monologue. Now, within that monologue, if you haven't captured the auditor's attention within the first 10 seconds, you're doomed. And I apply that very much to my work, to my writing. I make things active right away. I show immediately. I devolve, or I bring out the plot. I reveal the plot fairly immediately, so to entice the reader in, to suck them right into the story. That's active. And you can make this. You could take this even more granularly with active versus inactive sentences. You know, Jack ate a box of cornflakes. That's active. This morning, Jack will probably eat a box of cornflakes. That's inactive. But the idea of show don't tell, I believe, really involves less exposition and more action. And we're not talking about like an action movie action. I'm talking about the characters actually doing things. And the things that the characters are doing further the story along. And I think that that's important. That is not just important, it's crucial. Because a book, a novella, a novel, a short story, a piece of flash fiction is absolutely nothing without a story to tell. You can write the most beautiful and brilliant and perfect prose and have the most dimensional and interesting characters ever written. If you don't have a story, it's going to amount to boredom and nothing. Now, of course, that really only applies to fiction. Nonfiction, you don't have to really have a story. But we're not talking about nonfiction. We're talking about la fiction. So, as you're writing your book, or your story, whatever, make sure that exposition, that setup, that backstory is kept at a minimum. Or, another idea, if you have to have that backstory, that exposition, that setup, you pepper it in. You can take that first chapter and still get the plot moving forward, still drop in that story, still excite the readers right away. And during that first chapter, you can kind of drop little hints of the backstory. Have the character reveal those things instead of the narrator revealing those things. And by doing that, your story as a whole becomes active. And it'll cause the reader, it'll draw the reader in immediately. And that's how you write a good story. That's how you start off a good story. I mean, there's all sorts of other elements to writing a good story, but the beginning and end of a story is crucial. Of course, the middle is as well, but you've got to get their attention, and you can't get their attention when you tell. You can get their attention when you show, but not when you tell. And that's kind of my explanation of show, don't tell. I'm sure that there are much better explanations out there, but that's the one that helps prevent me from telling and not showing. And it truly is, for me, everything within the realm of writing boils down to storytelling. We are storytellers. And if you can't tell a good story, you can't write a good book. Now, I would love to play Rush's Show Don't Tell before and after this video because it's very apropos, I think. Of course, copyright doesn't allow me to do that. And of course, I love Rush and respect them, so, you gotta respect. Anyway, Muse. That's my take on Show Don't Tell. I hope it helps clear things up for you, as it does for me. What do you think, Muse? Shall we dance? You want to dance? Come on, let's dance. Bring it in. Bring it in for a dance.